Okay, there's still a lot of people joining, but I think most of us are here. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to first introduce you to Jason Tillema. He will be doing the presentation today, and he is with Education Resources. He's also a member of my board and has served on their board as a appraiser representative, and does a lot of education for appraisers around the whole state, and came highly recommended for our presentation today. So a couple of the topics that we'll be covering, he's going to share some information on the adoption of the ANSI measuring standard for gross living area. And he'll also be touching base a little bit on desktop appraisals and just some changes in appraising in general. So welcome, Jason, and I'll let you take it away. As I mentioned earlier, if everyone would stay on mute unless you have a question, and I think Jason is open to those questions during the presentation, correct?
Absolutely. I don't find it rude at all to interrupt me and ask a question. As a matter of fact, I think it's better to go ahead and ask that question while we're on the topic rather than trying to come back to it in 20, 30 minutes. So.
And I will be monitoring the chat as well.
Okay.
So if anyone needs to put anything in chat, I'll be happy to monitor that for you as well.
Yeah, and in the past, what we have done is a lot of times people aren't comfortable asking a question during a Zoom meeting, which is fine. It's understandable. If you put the question in the chat, Amy can feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions, doing it that way as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started here, because quite honestly, we've got a lot of information that we're going to go through. We're going to do it in a very quick time frame. We have an hour to get this done, and I'm going to hit on a lot of these key points here for both ANSI and hopefully for the desktop appraisals as well. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with ANSI. If you guys have any questions, even later on, I have my email up there. Email is by far the best way to get a hold of me. The 571-8800 number, that is our office number, so you can call there as well. But yeah, I will admit that I'm not great at getting back to emails within a timely manner. Sometimes it can take a day or two before I finally get back to you, but I get 300-400 emails a day, and sometimes things get lost in that cluster. So as Amy had mentioned, I am an appraiser here in the Central Indiana market. I've been doing residential properties since '97. I have done anything from 1,500 to 15 million. So I get to see quite a variety of homes there. I've been involved with the Appraisal Institute, been involved with MyBor, been teaching with the Appraisal Institute since 2014, and been doing USPAP instructing since 2018. So, all right, let's take a look here real quickly. We're going to go through ANSI, and for those of you who don't know, I'm going to bring another slide or another PowerPoint over here. I was telling Amy what I end up doing. I teach a 4-hour class for appraisers on ANSI. And so what I've done is I've kind of taken a lot of the information that was in that class and reduced it so that we can get this done in an hour. But one of the things I forgot to put in here, what exactly is ANSI? And so for those of you who don't know, ANSI, it's a nonprofit organization, and they really kind of administer and coordinate voluntary standards and conformity assessment systems. What we are going to be dealing with is the ANSI Z765. And this Z765-2021, that's what the appraisers have to abide by. That's what we have to adhere to. The standard was, it was in 1994, the National Home Builders Association and NAR really pushed for there to be a standard. And in 1996, ANSI put together the standard that we have to measure by, but it wasn't required of us. And so in December 15th, Fannie Mae made this announcement that as of April 1st, any loan with an effective date of April 1st or later, the home would have to be measured to the ANSI standard. And so it's important to recognize that only Fannie Mae is asking for this right now. They're the only ones who are requiring it. I'm assuming that, especially if you are working in a rural market, you see a lot more of the USDA loans, FHA, VA. None of those are required to be measured to the ANSI standard. It's only my opinion, but I think in time they'll require it as well. What I've told a lot of appraisers is that, especially once you get used to doing the ANSI standard, it's really a fairly easy way to do it. There's really nothing too difficult about it. And then at that point, why would you ever want to switch? Stick to measuring one way, and you do it for every time. Oh, I did have that in there, Amy. So there's the ANSI standard, or ANSI again. Fannie Mae does have a fact sheet out there. You guys can Google this if you want to get a copy of it. Just Google Fannie Mae fact sheet ANSI. One of the things that they really kind of noted here was that they want to create alignment across market participants. In other words, what they really want to have here is consistency in the way that things are being done. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. They are making the point that this does provide a professional and defensible method for the appraiser. One of the examples that I have heard here, and again, I'm going to give you a secondhand example here. This did not happen to me, but an appraiser went into court and the opposing counsel said, look, we have a 400 square foot difference between your appraisal and my client's appraisal. Where did you mess up? And the appraiser said, well, I didn't mess up. I measured the home to the ANSI standard. At which point the courtroom kind of came to a stop, and the judge asked him, what is the ANSI standard? Now, the appraiser thankfully had his handbook with him, and he held it up. He said, I measured the home according to the standard here in ANSI. And he said, I have no idea how the other appraiser did it. Well, the other appraiser didn't follow any standard. And so by having a standard, they were able to, it gave the appraiser a lot more credibility in that litigation assignment. It does allow for transparent and repeatable results, the user of the appraisal report. I kind of want to highlight this repeatable results. What Fannie Mae recognizes that appraisers are still, that there can still be differences in the square footage, but those differences aren't going to be significant. You may have somebody measured a home at 1,537 square feet, and the other appraiser comes in at 1,513. 24 square feet is not a big deal. And so Fannie Mae's not concerned or primarily concerned with accuracy. They're concerned with getting repeatable and consistent results. This ANSI will provide for a consistent unit of comparison for transactional data. In today's market, I have said this before, in today's market, I think about the only thing that matters is the fact that there's a for sale sign in the front yard, right? It doesn't matter if the home's updated or not. If it's available, it's going to, that's what really matters. But I think we can all agree that today's market is not a typical market. And so typically one of the things that has always been one of the key elements of comparison has always been square footage of the home. Well, if square footage is so important, then we need to be consistent in the way that we do it. And so Fannie Mae recognizes that, and that's one of the things that they've noted here. They also have noted that there is a higher confidence in the risk management and valuation modeling. And I had mentioned to Amy right before class, there's some scary things going on, at least in my opinion, with what Fannie Mae is doing and the changes that they're making. One of which to me is this valuation modeling. If they have higher confidence in the valuation modeling, they may not need the appraiser as much as, you know, and so as an appraiser, that is a little scary. In terms of that valuation modeling, there are, in the past, they have always used algorithms, and you guys may have heard of automated valuation models. Well, those AVMs are using algorithms. Algorithms are going to become dinosaurs. And the reason I say that is because of deep learning. Sometimes that's referred to as machine learning, artificial intelligence. That's kind of things that we're talking about here. And so they'll be using these neural analysis networks in order to really kind of come up with a higher confidence in that valuation model. That is a scary thing. It's also really cool if you start looking into that data science, but again, from an appraiser perspective, that can be a little scary. Again, one of the key components here is reproducibility. And so I'm going to show you an example here of, now I made these numbers up, but this is something that Fannie Mae might see in what they have. I'm trying to remember the name of it. They have a database. And so what they do is they data mine off of the appraisal. And they take that information off the appraisal, and they've created this truly gold standard for a database. But in order for that database to really work well, and this is where that data science comes in, the data has to be clean. And so they need to have consistent data to populate that database in order to get that clean data to produce good results. But here is an example. 6 different appraisers go out and measure a home, and we get information like this. This is not unusual for Fannie Mae to find within their database. One property, and it could have a difference of nearly, well, just 900 square feet in the reported square footage. So by moving towards a standard, in the case I'm showing here, all 6 appraisers should probably be close to that 1,600 square feet, you know, because they're all going to be using the ANSI standard at that point. We're no longer going to be looking at or relying on public records information. You know, the listing may have included the basement. Homeowners, they're a lot of times just taking a wild guess, and they're always going to include that finished basement because they live down there at times. So that's a big reason why Fannie Mae is really kind of moving towards this standard. We got to clean up all this data. Real quickly here, I want to kind of go through some, well, actually, let me go back. Does anybody have any questions on the reasons why Fannie Mae is doing this? Okay.
Jason?
Yes.
Hey, I have a quick question regarding that previous slide there. So do you have any thoughts on, like, example, appraisal 4 and appraiser 5? You're essentially relying on other people's information. And do you have any thoughts on that, on how to make that more accurate? I mean, these are properties that we may not have ever been in ourselves. So that's what's creating the discrepancy there.
Correct. In terms of, well, I will say this, in just for instance, on appraiser 4, so he's used the information from the listing, and appraiser 5 is using information from the owner. I'm going to go ahead and throw in appraiser 3 there. They're using that information from public records. In the past, prior to April 1st of this year, an appraiser wasn't required to measure anything. As far as USPAP was concerned, the appraiser just simply had to know where they got the information. And so it was perfectly acceptable for me to, I'm thinking of the house I looked at yesterday. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at a house that is in the shape of an arrow. It literally is in the shape of an arrow, and there are 3 separate buildings with little breezeways connecting it. And it was not fun measuring that yesterday. I wish I hadn't looked at that 3 weeks ago and been able to just use the information off the public records, because 3 weeks ago, I would have been able to do that and I would be able to state where the information was coming from. And as long as that information appeared to be reliable, it was okay to use that. If I was looking at the information on public records thinking, you know what, they included the upper level as the same as the main, I know for a fact that that's not true, then it's no longer reliable and I can't use the information. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I understand that thinking, but like on, say, appraiser 4, if you say it's a comp that you've never been in the house and it's hard to know. And on that example that they doubled the first floor like the assessor does, or realtors do a lot, and you've never been in the house, I mean, would you just make your best guess based on the information you think you know? Because I feel like that could get you in trouble too, and say your guess is incorrect. At least if you did use the assessor records or realtor records, you would have something to fall back on as opposed to just a guess.
Okay, all right, let me give you an example of this. So in terms of like a Cape Cod style home, in our market, the majority of the time, you know, you've got this sloped upper level. And we know for a fact that that upper level is not the same as the main level. But many, many, many times the property record card will show that the upper and the main are the same. So to answer your question, if I'm looking at a comp that is a Cape Cod like that, and public records or the listing is showing 2,200 square feet, there's different ways to handle that. The most important thing, because you mentioned getting yourself into trouble, the most important thing is to explain what you did and why you did it. If you do that, you're not going to get in any kind of trouble. And so looking at using that Cape Cod as the example, one, you could go ahead and report it as 2,200 square feet. Note that we know that that's not true, but we have no way of determining what it really is. Therefore, I'm not taking an adjustment. Another example would be, all right, that I know it's not the same as the main level, so I'm just going to take 50% of it, or maybe 2/3 of it, and I'm going to report that. Be sure to report in your appraisal report that that's what you're doing and that you still made the adjustment. Another way to do it would be to take the room dimensions, add them up, and give that to the second floor. So there's 2-3 different ways that you can handle that. Again, the most important thing is explain what you did and why you did it.
Thanks, Jason. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yep. All right, let's take a look here at some of the essentials. First of all, ANSI only applies to single unit, attached and detached single family housing. This does not include apartments, it does not include duplexes or 2 to 4 units, and it does not include condominiums. Condominiums typically are going to be measured from, you know, we say from drywall to drywall. So you're measuring that inside because many times they don't even own the framing for a condominium. And so, yeah, you know, that's something you really have to take into consideration there. The exterior perimeter is going to be measured to the nearest inch or to the nearest 1/10 of a foot. Majority of appraisers that I've talked to are measuring to the 1/10 of a foot. It's quite honestly, it's a little easier and our software is designed for that. Areas must have a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet in order to be counted as square footage. That I know I have been in homes before where now just to give you a little background, I'm 6'5", and if I have to walk through a home like this, we don't have a minimum of 7 feet. And so I know as I'm walking through there, okay, that's not going to count. But in those instances, appraisers do have an exception code that they can apply in their appraisal report. So if I go out and I look at this home and I know it's not 7 feet, but it's 1,500 square feet, Fannie Mae really doesn't want us to report that as 0. And so I could use the exception in that instance and use the code, put that in the report, and then report the 1,500 square feet. Again, when you apply that code, you have to give a reason why. And Fannie Mae is monitoring when appraisers use that code because they don't want appraisers using it simply to get out of measuring to the ANSI standard. All right, so it's going to be very unique circumstances when you actually apply that code. If you're measuring the upper level from the interior, we do add 6 inches to the measurement in order to account for the exterior perimeter, because again, we're measuring the exterior perimeter. And so if we're measuring from the inside, we have to add for that. Enclosed sunrooms, porches, patios, that sort of thing, they must be finished to a similar level of quality as other areas of the home, and they must be suitable for year-round use. Here in central Indiana, when my dad trained me, when we would find or come across a sunroom or a 3-season room such as that, his reply to me was always, well, it has to have a permanent heat source. Well, as far as the ANSI standard is concerned, it doesn't have to have a permanent heat source. It has to be suitable for year-round use. Now, I'm bringing this up because I know a lot of brokers here in central Indiana also have practices down in Florida. And so if you have a practice down in Miami or Key West, you don't really need heat down there. Probably need central air. I know I would need central air down there, but that's why ANSI ended up, they did make a change on that. And so it needs to be suitable for year-round use. And that's what we're looking for there. This first bullet point here is what tends to cause some a little bit of heartache for some people. If any portion of a level is below grade, then that entire level cannot be included in the gross living area. Probably the best example I can give you guys of this would be tri-levels and bi-levels. And so many times, and the majority of the time, what I see when I'm appraising either a bi or a tri-level is that they have included that lower level in the square footage. Now, granted, the property record cards around here, they include that lower level in the square footage. But something that's really important to kind of note here, a lot of the listings are using the information off of public records, but public records was never intended to populate our data. And so they have their own way of determining what these square footages are. They also have their own way of really kind of using it for their assessments. It was never intended for us to be using it in real estate. So having said that, when I look at a bi-level or a tri-level, it usually shows that there's no basement and all of that area is in the GLA or the gross living area. Per the ANSI standard, any portion of a level that's below grade, and that below grade area could be a foot. If 1 foot of it is below grade, then it cannot be included in the square footage. And I want to show you guys, I want to show you real quickly here an example of this. These are my elementary drawings. I'm not a graphic designer. And so you can see here on the picture on the left, we're at grade. So this level here, this main level where your entry steps are going into, that can be counted in the gross living area. In this instance over here, you'll see that on the back side of this, approximately, a foot, 2 feet of it is below grade. That entire area cannot be included in the gross living area. Especially around here, we've got Geist and Morse Reservoir, Eagle Creek Reservoir. I know in the northern counties, there's a lot more water or waterfront properties up near there. So you guys have a lot of these waterfront walkout basements, right? These walkout basements, if any portion of it is below grade, does not get included in the gross living area, okay? My parents had a home similar to that where there were 3 bedrooms and 2 full baths in the basement, and there was only 1 bedroom, 1 bath on the main level. Majority of the time, they were in the basement. But per the ANSI standard, that basement would not be, or that lower level would not be included in the gross living area. See here. Other finished areas, you know, a lot of times you'll have like an in-law quarters or teen quarters located above the garage. If you have to, or in order for that area to be included in the gross living area, it has to be connected to the house by a continuous finished area. And so not too long ago, I was appraising a home where I'm pretty much done with the main level and I still haven't seen any staircases. And I asked the homeowner, I said, you know, when I did the outside, it looked like you had an upper level. And he said, yeah, we do. And I said, well, did I miss the staircase? He said, no, it's out in the garage. So we actually had to walk out into the unfinished, unheated garage. There's the staircase, went upstairs. There's a bonus room. Like there were 2 or 3 bedrooms and a full bath.
Mhm.
Per the ANSI standard, none of that would have been included in the square footage. Now, to make things even more confusing for you guys, I noted that there were, I can't remember exactly what it was, let's say it was 2 bedrooms and a full bath. Even though I cannot include the area in the square footage, Fannie Mae still wants us to include the bedroom and the bath count because they're data mining. And they want that information to populate their data. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because you guys may see a report in the future and you're going to look at this and say, well, the appraiser wouldn't count the 1,000 square feet, but they counted the 2 bedrooms and the full bath. That's inconsistent and they can't do that. That's why I'm bringing this up. We are required to do it that way now. The ANSI standard doesn't have anything in it regarding bedroom or room or bathroom counts. So Fannie Mae has kind of made their own rule on that. Again, if you look up those FAQs for ANSI and the Fannie Mae, I think it was number 16 that really kind of went through that in detail. And so they'll tell you why they're doing it there.
Quick question for you, if I
yes.
may. We have several homes in Howard and Miami County that are, the majority of the home is underground.
Uh-huh.
Even ones that are covered on the top level with soil. How are we to give them square footage?
Are you referring to like a berm home or an earth home?
Yes.
Okay. Those are unique situations that would fall under the exception code.
Okay.
Okay. Fannie Mae recognizes that it doesn't make sense to say that there is 0 square feet. So they've given the appraisers this exception code for very unique properties like that. Do you guys have a lot of those? Okay. All right. I was going to say, I've only done one in my 24 years and I don't particularly want to do any more.
I know of 3 in Miami County and a couple in Howard County.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they do have that code for us. And so, but what I have told appraisers is that you really have to be careful with that code, because in class, I've had appraisers say, well, I'm just going to put that code in every single time. That way I don't have to measure to the ANSI standard. That is exactly what Fannie Mae is looking for. And what that code does, again, it's a data mining thing. So as soon as an appraisal comes in, and the code is really weird. It's like GXX001 dash. So there's probably no other reason anybody would ever have GXX001 in a report. And so they've put that in as a very unique code. When it pops up running through their UCDP, they'll then read the report. And if they find that the appraiser is doing this consistently, just to get out of using the standard, first of all, they will send a letter of warning, and you want to pay attention to that letter of warning, because you get one warning. The next time they put you on their blacklist, and if you go on the blacklist for Fannie Mae, your career is done. No lender will send you work. And as soon as there's an argument, well, I can just do litigation appraising. Nope. As soon as that opposing counsel finds out you're on the blacklist, your credibility is completely gone. And so you're no longer useful as a litigation appraiser. So.
Jason, we had a question in the chat. It says, what about bedrooms below grade? Do they count?
No, they do not. What Fannie Mae is saying is that, look, it's only for those areas above grade that don't count in the square footage that you then include them in the room and the bedroom and the bath count. It does not apply to the below grade stuff, because there is a separate area on our reports where we report below grade. Okay. One of the things I do want to note here, and we'll get to it here shortly, I'll come back to that, but on the sloped ceilings, so you have like the Cape Cod stuff. In our market, Broad Ripple, there's a lot of homes that have converted the attic to finished area. So a lot of times you get that slope in there. The way that ANSI works here is that we measure from the 5-foot mark of one wall over to the 5-foot mark of the other wall. And everything in between there, as long as it meets 50% of that meets the 7-foot height requirement, can be included in GLA. But areas on the outside of those 5-foot marks are not included in GLA. But this one tends to cause a lot of confusion after the report has been turned in. I've had numerous homeowners call me and say, you really messed up. You said that bonus room upstairs is 10 by 40. He said, I just measured it and it is 15 by 40. You need to change your report. No, I put in my report that I measured to the ANSI standard, and ANSI standard says this. So be aware of that. You may have some points or some appraisals that come back looking weird because of that. We've already talked about that first one. The second bullet point here, adhering to the ANSI standard, this is really going to require appraisers just to put a lot more explanation in their reports. I had one on Monday where when I pulled up to the property, I walked up to the covered porch. So I actually had to walk up, and so I'm above grade at this point. And I go inside, you've got your foyer, you've got a den, you've got this family room, a half bath, there was a mud room, a laundry room, all of that there. But as I walked towards the back, what happened was there were stairs that then went up to the kitchen. And when I measured the outside, even though I had walked up to the covered porch, by the time I got to the rear side of that level, 2 feet of it was below grade. None of that got counted in the GLA. And so in my report, I had to explain why 1,400 square feet was not being included in the GLA, but had to be reported somewhere else in my report. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, I'm going to show you guys, this is a report I'm actually working on. It's not the one I was looking at on Monday. But what I ended up doing here, I called it additional living, and I forget exactly how much it was, but I'll just call it 1,400 square feet. Now, I had an adjustment up here, so you can see I've made adjustments for square footage. On the property I was working on Monday, I think my square footage adjustment was $90 a square foot. And so what I ended up doing was taking my 1,400 square feet, multiplying that by, I'm not going to be able to do that in my head, 1,425 times 90. So I had $128,250 square foot adjustment. And I did that across the board. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because when I gave this presentation on Tuesday, a lot of agents were upset because they were saying, look, there's value to that area. What do you mean you're not going to include it? I never said that there wasn't value to it. I'm just saying that per the ANSI standard, I can't report it right here. I am going to report it down here. And I am going to give it as much value as I gave this up here. And so that's one thing that you guys really want to take into consideration is, okay, even though that it's not being reported the same way that we are used to it being reported, there's no impact on the value of the property. It's just being reported somewhere else in the report, and they're making the adjustments somewhere else. So that's a really key point to make there, and something I think is really important to take away from today. Some of the basics of the ANSI standard here, go through this fairly quickly because we've already talked about a lot of it. You guys see that utility room in the middle of my sketch? You guys ever open up a door and it's you know, you got the furnace, you got the water heater, but what you have is you have concrete floor. You may have framed walls, no drywall, it's just the frame. And so what ANSI says is that in order to be considered finished, you do have to have the walls, you do have to have finished flooring. And so that 36 square feet on that utility room would not be included in the gross living area. And so appraisers are, you know, we have to segment that part out. Now 36 square feet isn't going to, you know, have too much of an impact, but you may look at that and you may say, hey, you know, it's a part of the main level and you didn't include it. That's the reason why it would not be included. Here's our example on the below grade, above grade again. This was not the photo of the home that I appraised, but it's a very similar one. So you guys can see the staircase in the back that's leading up to a finished bonus room above the garage. That's the only access to that finished bonus room. That finished bonus room cannot be included in the gross living area. Is there value to that bonus room? Sure, but we have to report it somewhere else. It does not get included in the GLA. Here's some examples of that 5 foot mark I was talking to you about with the slope ceilings. So you can see here that I have the 5 foot going up here, and from this 5 foot mark to the 5 foot mark over here, it's 25.5 feet. And we have a 9 foot ceiling height. So all of that area, or all of the 25 and a half from the 5 foot mark to the 5 foot mark, whatever the width is, we can multiply that, and that's your square footage. That part would count. You see this little area right here? That part right there, and it would be the same over here, cannot be included in the GLA because they're outside of that 5 foot mark. That's one example there. On this example here, none of it is included. And none of it is included because I'm walking through like this. And so we don't have that minimum 7 foot height. And so at this point, none of that area will be included in the gross living area. In this example, this one becomes a little bit more difficult for appraisers because is there value to this? Well, if it's finished out and it's heated, there may be value to it. There's no value to me. I can't go up there and use that room, but my 8-year-old daughter could, you know, and so, you know, the functionality is what's impacted here. But again, none of it is actually included in the gross living area. On this example, from the 5 foot mark to the 5 foot mark, you have 8 feet. But I want to point out right here, this area will not be included in the gross living area because a minimum of 50% of this 8 feet is not at 7 feet height. And so you can see here, from the floor to the ceiling was 7 feet, at least 5 of it does not meet that minimum height requirement. So therefore, the entire area will not be included in the gross living area. Open areas, I'm sure you guys see this quite often. Have like a 2-story great room, you might have a 2-story foyer, 2-story entry area. That area is not included in the gross living area for the upper level. So that does get segmented out.
Is this going to be with our taxes?
No.
Say I've got a house that's got vaulted, and why not?
The assessors have their own way of doing this. And again, that's why I was saying earlier on, the assessor's information was never intended for us to populate our data with. They have different ways of doing things. Let me show you real quickly here. If I can find it.
We got standards of paying taxes, and then we got standards of what we're selling. Doesn't make sense.
Everything should code.
Just calling to see if I could schedule.
Their standards, again, are different than the standards that we're required to adhere to. Trying to find the example here.
Hey, Charmaine. Hey, how are you? Good, good. Hey, my
If I can find that example, I'll show it here, but I'm not seeing it right now. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I was too far. What I have here is the public records versus the ANSI measurement. And I don't know if this will answer your question or not, but the top part, this top picture here, was pulled right off of the property record card. Now this is actually a property I was appraising. And you can see here that they're showing the main level as 792 square feet. And I've kind of circled what I measured the first floor at. I came in at 502 square feet, which I thought, how is that possible? That's a 290 square foot difference. And so it took me about 20-30 minutes of really kind of studying what they did, what I did. I knew I had good measurements, and I say good, I didn't say right, because I measured both the inside and the outside. I like to measure the inside just to double check my numbers from the outside. And so I was confident in the numbers that I had, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally, I looked right here, and it was this number right here, this 264. They included the garage in the square footage. And so here you can clearly see that was a one-car attached garage. It should not have been included in the square footage. More importantly, though, and I think this is kind of where I'm going with your question, this was a townhome, and every single unit in that townhome is the exact same. They're all model matches, and every single one of them, I pulled up a bunch of the property record cards. They all show 792 as the main level, and so even though the assessor has them at 792, they're all still being assessed the same way. Because I really thought, hey, you know what I could do is maybe send out a letter and let everybody know you're being over-assessed because of your square footage. You don't have 1,300 square feet, you have 1,000. Let me measure your home and you can appeal your taxes. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's not going to work. Because the assessor recognizes the fact that everybody was assessed the exact same way. And so they're not going to be inclined to reduce the taxes on anybody. They might go in and just change the square footage to what it should be. And so, yeah, it wasn't, I never did send out that letter, but does that kind of answer your question?
Not really. I've got a house myself, okay? I've got an upstairs that's vaulted ceilings up to 12 feet. It goes right, it's like an A-frame. And it comes down to 4 feet on the sides. But I can only go to the 5 feet. It's usable space. I'm getting taxed on all of that. I'm not getting taxed on the 5 feet in and up.
Correct.
And why are the standards not equal, the same?
You know what? I hope eventually they will be. But as of today, if a loan is being sold to Fannie Mae, appraisers are required to use the ANSI standard. And assessors are not required to abide by any standard, to the best of my knowledge. If there's an assessor on the call today and you want to jump in and correct me, please do so. But to the best of my knowledge, they are not required to abide by any standard.
So do we, when we set our square footage out for people, base it on the 5 foot measure rule, or do we go wall to wall like the assessor sheet? And how do you explain that to the customer? The taxes are based on this, but you're buying this.
Correct. That's a great question. And I can't really answer that because I don't have a broker's license. I don't sell real estate. And so what I would say is that this is only my opinion. Best practice is if you use public records information, you need to let your seller and or your buyer know that, look, the appraiser may come back at a different square footage. And the reason is because the appraiser is required to abide by ANSI. We don't know how the appraiser or the assessor got their square footage. Now, if you do know how they do or how they got it, absolutely let them know. But I think that's what's most important here is that, and this is where I really feel like it's going to impact brokers the most. We need to put a lot more explanation in our reports because of ANSI. And in my opinion, you're going to need to explain to the borrower or to the buyer and seller more often why there might be discrepancies in the square footage. But again,
So will
we
this,
no longer have the choice on how we do the measurement.
as far as Fannie Mae, but if it's Freddie Mac or anything else, it won't matter at this point. So
At
we
this
stay away
point,
from Fannie Mae.
Yeah, at this point, that's correct. Only Fannie Mae is requiring this, but I fully expect all of them to kind of get in line on this as well. But here's the other thing. Unless it's FHA, VA, or USDA, an appraiser has no idea whether or not it's going to be sold to Fannie Mae. And it could go to Fannie Mae, it could go to Freddie Mac, it could go to Wall Street. We have no clue. Nobody is going to tell us that it's absolutely going to Fannie Mae. Therefore, unless it's FHA or VA, appraisers are measuring to the ANSI standard. All right, stairs. This one, I think in the past, a lot of times you might see staircases get cut off right around in here. That's no longer the case. Staircases must be included on both or stairs are included on each level that they serve. Real quickly here, if we take, it's kind of, this one's kind of an oddball one, but you guys may come across it. And so I do want to bring this up. I'm going to pull up my other PowerPoint here. You may come across a situation like this. If that green highlighted staircase is a finished area right there, and it's leading up to an unfinished attic, staircases are to be included on each level that they serve. And so you may end up seeing a situation where the appraiser is saying that there's a third level to the home, and the only thing that they're including is the staircase. Per the ANSI standard, that's the way it's supposed to be done. Okay, but I wholeheartedly agree it's going to look really weird when the appraiser has this level here as the upper level, and then they've got this cutout of the staircase, noting that as a third level. But again, that's something for you guys to recognize that it could happen. But yeah, really kind of a weird one there. But you'll probably end up seeing that. Any questions on ANSI before we jump into desktops real quick?
Just one more question about the stairs. So I've always been told that on the second level, you don't include the stairs because it kind of double dips essentially. So you're saying now, like the stairs should be part of the sketch on the second level.
Absolutely, and it will be counted as square footage on each level. And Michael, I've heard that in the past as well. I'm trying to remember which standard it was. I don't remember if it was AMS that had that, where it would only be included on one level. But as far as ANSI is concerned, you include that staircase on each level.
Thank you.
All right, desktop appraisals. We're not going to spend as much time on this, but I do want to go over it real quickly here. As far as Fannie Mae is concerned, desktop appraisals, there are some benefits here. It supports the digital transformation in the mortgage origination process. Cost and time efficient process benefits borrowers and lenders, and I cannot disagree more with that statement. I've talked to a lot of appraisers in regards to doing these desktop appraisals, and I've actually answered probably 4 or 5 surveys from clients and lenders. And one of the questions that's always on that survey is, how much are you going to reduce your fee? I never said I was. As a matter of fact, my fee may end up going higher because there's a lot more liability to it. And so there's no time saving for me. As a matter of fact, it may even take me longer to do this than if I just went out and did a traditional appraisal. And so there is that to take into consideration. May reduce the confirmation bias. It mitigates the appraiser capacity constraints. I'm not sure about that one either. I know there are some other appraisers on this call. I am absolutely slammed doing 80 to 100 hours a week, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't feel like I'm ever going to get caught up. So I'm not sure about this one. The rigorous testing shows similar risk performance compared to traditional appraisals. I don't doubt that, but I haven't seen the test results either. One of the arguments that I've heard against this is that as an appraiser, the appraiser may be a little more conservative in the valuation process because they didn't actually see the property. Now that argument, I at least can understand. I don't know that I agree with it, but I can at least understand it. And then it improves disaster pandemic response time. Shortly after the pandemic hit, once everything shut down, they did allow us to do these, what they were calling non-interior interior inspections. And I probably did 4 or 5 of them. I didn't do a lot of them. It's one reason why I can say it didn't save me any time. As a matter of fact, it took a lot more time. And so trying to do an inspection on FaceTime or doing it through Zoom is a very difficult thing to do. As I walk through and do a traditional inspection on the home, I know exactly where I'm going, exactly what I'm looking for. But now when you're doing it through FaceTime or Skype, you have to explain to the borrower, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And unfortunately, some of the times you get the question, well, why do you need to see that? Well, why do you need to do that? Well, why? And so that's what I mean by it takes a lot more time sometimes to get through that. Desktop appraisals, this is where it comes in for you guys. These are only available for purchases. Okay, you cannot do a desktop appraisal on a refinance. And so you guys are the ones that are involved with the purchases. So this is where it's going to impact you. It has to be a loan to value ratio of 90% or less. There are some other requirements for it, but I'm not in the lending side of this, so I don't know what all of the requirements are. It's also very, very important to note here, your borrower does not have to take this option. If the lender comes back and says, your loan is eligible for a desktop appraisal, and we highly encourage you to do this because we'll get the appraisal back in 2 days rather than 2 weeks. It's not always the case. And again, it's probably going to be in the best interest of brokers and agents to encourage that borrower to get the traditional appraisal rather than doing the desktop. Yeah, it probably will take a little bit longer, but at that point, you've got an appraiser in the home actually seeing things and doing things the way that they are really most comfortable with doing it. There are some, as far as an appraiser is concerned, there are some risks with doing the desktop appraisals. Fannie Mae will not allow extraordinary assumptions on a desktop appraisal. Well, an extraordinary assumption is something that could cover or reduce the liability to the appraiser, but because they're not allowing it, I may not want to do these desktop appraisals. So again, it's important to know that you do have the option to say, no, we want a traditional appraisal. Again, the appraiser is not going to visit the property. However, the appraiser is required to put a sketch and a floor plan of the improvements in the appraisal report. How do we get a floor plan? And it's important to note there's a difference between a floor plan and a sketch. A sketch is just going to give you that exterior perimeter with the dimensions. A floor plan, as far as the requirements from Fannie Mae, they require interior walls, where the staircases are, where the doorways are, where the exterior ingress and egress is, and then you have to label each room. So how do we get that information? And it may end up being that, again, you have to FaceTime and then try to sketch it on your desktop software. You would actually have to have the homeowner taking the measurements, or have the agent taking the measurements and then showing the appraiser, here's what I got. It would take a lot of extra time to do that. But it's also important to know appraisers are not the ones responsible for obtaining the floor plan. There's different ways that we can get it. If there's a prior appraisal that has it, that's great.
You can send it out to you this late.
And as long as we find that the sketch or the floor plan is
Are you talking about
reliable, we can
rental?
use that information.
We don't have any
Otherwise,
rentals with
brokers,
vacancies right now.
agents, the borrowers,
You're welcome.
they're going to have
Bye-bye.
to walk through and help us get that floor plan. One of the ways to do that, one of the ways that's coming up, currently these are the tools of the trade when you're measuring a home. Tools in the near future are going to use LiDAR technology. Anybody here know what LiDAR technology is? Bob knows because he was in class a couple weeks ago, but that LiDAR is actually really, really cool. You guys in your car, a lot of you will have the navigation screen. And so you put it into reverse and you may get a full picture of your car, right? Or you may get the lines showing, hey, if you're backing up, or as soon as you get close to something, it starts to beep. You guys are using LiDAR technology at that point. LiDAR is light, distance, and range technology. And it's really, really pretty cool how it works. But in terms of doing the floor plan for a home, I have an iPad Pro, and that iPad Pro has a LiDAR camera on it. The newer iPhones have LiDAR technology. And what LiDAR does, I can actually take my phone and walk through a home, and all I'm doing is scanning the rooms. And as I go through, I scan. When I get to the kitchen, I can kind of scan up and down and kind of show them where all the cabinets are and everything. And with the first one here, Kubicasa, it's actually becoming the most popular one, or it's really the one that's getting the most press in the appraisal profession for doing this. You go through, you do that home, takes about 10, 15 minutes to walk through a house. You then send the information off to Kubicasa, and within 24 hours, you have the entire floor plan and it's ANSI compliant. Magic Plan is another one. Right now, the reason I have not tried Kubicasa is because it's $35 per report in order to do that. And so I have not gone out and you know, I've already looked at 10 properties this week. And so it can get pretty expensive when you're using that. The third one down, Room Scan LiDAR, I do have that one on my iPad because it's $3.99 a month, which I find that to be much more reasonable. And so with that one, that was my first attempt using Room Scan LiDAR. And I will tell you this, it's incorrect. But the nice thing was that once I played around with it a little bit, I was able to take that bedroom and move it over. And then I was able to add in the laundry room which goes right here. So with Room Scan LiDAR, I was able to do some editing on the iPad. I'm able to send that to my computer, and then I can drop that into my report real quickly. What you will notice here is that there are no exterior measurements. That will not work for a desktop appraisal. You must have exterior dimensions. You must have the floor plan showing the rooms. And so that's important to note with those desktop appraisals as well. All right, any questions? I think I've actually held you over for 5 minutes here.
Are there any questions? I will say, Jason, probably the main thing that I hear is that most brokers don't want to be responsible for measuring, and so they always use, what's on, the assessor's website, and
Right.
which can be also really difficult for appraisers who then measure that same home at a different square footage, and then are using that for a comp. So
right. One of the things that's is really kind of important to note here as well is that Fannie Mae has kind of at least hinted at this. Hey, we're the first, but we fully expect this entire industry to be using the ANSI standard. And that spills over into the brokers and agents as well. And what I was telling the group the other day was Fannie Mae is not saying you have to measure the home. They're just saying that you have to report it on your listing with the ANSI measure or to the ANSI standard. And again, this is not a requirement as of today, but I'm a firm believer that within the next 5 years, it could be. And so I do think that it's coming, but what they are wanting is they are wanting consistency in the data. And that's really what they have noted, that, hey, we were the first, but we do expect others to kind of follow suit here.
Yeah.
And in terms of, a home being listed under public records information, we know that it's really not what they say it is. As an appraiser, there's nothing that says we have to make an adjustment. There have been numerous times where I did not apply an adjustment to a comp. In my explanation, I noted the reason why I'm not doing it. And that's really what's most important. Give them the explanation as to why. I know that square footage is wrong, but it's very similar to the subject in all these other major elements of comparison. So I don't want to trash this as a comp, but I'm going to include it in here, and I'm not taking a GLA adjustment.
All right. So are there any more?
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
So regarding your statement, what I always see is the square footage is always, when it's incorrect, or typically it's way too high than it actually is. So when it's like that, and an appraiser uses that as a comp, then it's actually hurting future home values. Because if the price is the same, but the square footage is actually less, that would help future home values, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any recommendations on that, I mean.
Oh, again, I really think that it's going to come down to eventually everybody's using ANSI. Everybody in the real estate industry. I don't expect assessors to do this. I really don't. But I do expect that once the appraisers have started using this for a while, I fully, FHA is going to jump on board, VA is going to jump on board, and it's just all going to kind of trickle down to the point where they're, we're saying, look, we're now providing consistent data, but now we need the information that we haven't personally inspected. We need that to be done consistently as well. And that's where it's going to trickle over to the broker side.
Yeah.
And again, they're not saying that they expect you to do the measurement. They're just expecting that it be reported on the listing to the ANSI standard. And just coming back to this right here, this technology it's not new. This stuff has been around for quite a while. And so how many here use Matterport or is it Matterport or Matterhorn, the photography service? You guys aren't actually the ones taking the photos, right? You hire somebody to do that. There's nothing that says you wouldn't hire somebody to do this ANSI standard measurement as well. And the Kubicasa one here, they are, in my opinion, trying to overtake the Matterhorn or the Matterport, whichever that's called, because it's a lot less expensive, $35 for a report on this one. And you can get 3D photos off of this. It really is. If you do a Google search for Kubicasa, watch some of the YouTube videos. It's really, really cool what they can do.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating in this. And Jason, I just want to thank you so much for this information and how it's impacting really all of our transactions, and also how we can proactively communicate with our buyers and sellers when there is the potential of some differences in what maybe is on a listing sheet and what a appraiser is going to value the home at.
I got one question before we end.
Sure.
Jason, you mentioned like hiring someone to take the pictures on this ANSI standard measurement. Is that going to only be in an appraiser's wheelhouse, or do you see this as being another profession or side gig of somebody that says, hey, I can just do the ANSI measurements for this fee?
Anybody could do this. If you guys would like a copy, I did not note that. Let me put this on here. If you guys would like a copy of the ANSI standard, you can go here to this homeinnovation.com. And if you go to the bookstore, you can scroll down and right there is the ANSI standard. Okay, it's $25. It's about 16 pages long, but quite honestly, the standard is only 3 or 4 pages long. And so it doesn't take a whole lot of time to read it and get familiar with it. But Jacob, to answer your question, no, I don't think that this is going to be exclusively for appraisers. If you wanted to, start your own side business with just measuring homes as a broker, you could certainly do that.
Yeah, there were a couple questions. One of them was whether the slides will be available, and I can work with you on that. But the other one is one of the BPO companies I work with has recruited BPO agents to measure the floor plans.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. There's a difference out there between, Fannie Mae has different options when it comes to an appraisal. First of all, they could do an appraisal waiver, so that there's no appraisal whatsoever. There's certain requirements for that. They also have the desktop appraisal, which we just kind of went through. Another one is called a bifurcated or a hybrid appraisal. Bifurcated and desktop appraisals are two different things, or two different products. The bifurcated, typically the appraiser is not going on site for that one either. And then lastly, they could just go ahead and do that traditional appraisal. And so there are differences between the desktop, the hybrid, and traditional. But yeah, they had numerous options available to them now.
A question for you, Jason.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the realtors how they should deal with a listing that give you an example? It's a ranch style house with a basement that's been finished. The ceiling height down there is less than 7 feet. And it's got 2 bedrooms, a bath, and a laundry room, and a family room down there. And, typically on our listing info sheets, if there's 2 bedrooms upstairs, they're going to call that 4 bedrooms and 2 full baths. On the, on the sheet itself. And when we have customers that are searching for homes and they don't want something less than 3 bedrooms, that's not going to show up if they do it to ANSI standards, even if they put comments in the comments section. So I know as an appraiser and as a realtor, I'm struggling with how I want to do that.
Bob, that's a really good question. I want to just kind of show you, as Amy noted earlier, I'm a part of the Central Indiana board of directors here, and I'm going to show you a listing here. And my board ended up changing this. I want to say it was close to 10 years ago. But what they do is they segment out all of that information. And that was perhaps one of the best things they possibly could have done. And the reason being, and Bob, I'm coming at it from an appraiser's perspective. If I'm looking for a 2-bedroom home, because I'm appraising a 2-bedroom home, yet it was, a property had 2 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms in the basement, so it was listed with 4. I missed that comp because I'm looking for only 2-bedroom homes. And so one of the things that I think eventually you're going to start seeing more of is you're probably going to start seeing more of that. Oh, Amy, help me out with it. Is it called the super region MLS system? I know there's
it's Sherry Smith. It's the Indiana Regional MLS.
Oh,
Well, and Sherry, what I was referring to was, when I was on the board, and they're looking, 30 years out on how they want to do this stuff.
yeah.
But the super MLS region was going to be something like Michigan and Indiana and Kentucky and Illinois and Wisconsin. And so now you've got 5 states all together using the same system.
Yeah.
They've got to get that type of consistency down. But yeah, here.
Well, I think, Jason,
So
from my perspective, I think that the square footage of the home can be separated from the room count.
Mm-hmm.
And so like on our MLS, we could still call it 4 bedrooms and 2 full baths where people are searching, but on the gross living area, that's where it's going to show up as a problem. And then you're going to have to, so it's going to show half the square footage, finished square footage than what you have. And the only way I know to deal with that is to make comments in the comments, where you can comment to the public. But, so I don't know, but if somebody's looking for a 2,000 or say a 2,000 plus square foot home, that could be a problem, just like you're saying, searching for room counts or anything else. When they're doing their MLS search, it's not going to show up, even though it's, I just think that's something that needs to be tweaked probably on the MLS level somehow. I'm not sure how to do that.
Well,
but for me,
this is really only my opinion. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this. But my opinion is that database that Fannie Mae has, again, they've been data mining from appraisals for 12 years now. That database is unbelievably amazing. It is the gold standard. But in my opinion, what has happened here is that when you really start digging into data science and learning more about it, one of the key elements to data science is you have to have clean data. You have to have consistently clean data. And I think Fannie Mae has now realized that even though we've got bad data going in, bad data coming out doesn't do us any good. We've got to have good data coming in. And that's why, in my opinion, over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to start seeing a lot more consistency in the way things are reported on the listing, the way it's reported in the appraisal, and then they can populate their database the way that they want it populated. And they'll get it with clean data. And once you've got clean data, you can do some amazing things in terms of developing values, developing trends, that sort of thing. And so I personally think that that's where we're headed.
Yeah,
but no, you're right, Bob. Is the way it's set up today, it's a little difficult to do that.
Right. And so let me just kind of add on to this regarding our MLS, the Indiana Regional MLS. So our data is RESO compliant, and RESO sets the standards as to what we call our data fields. And then we do have above grade room count, below grade room count, above and below grade bedroom count available to us. We have finished square footage above grade, unfinished square footage above grade, and the same thing for below grade. So it's going to be an education process for people to understand that we do have these fields and that we could correct the data. It's not anything that would get changed overnight. And now that Fannie Mae is requiring these ANSI standards, I can see possibly RESO revising some of their standards and requiring those fields to be used in a better way. So, you know, everybody just needs to remember this is kind of brand new to us, but kind of not. It's just being enforced more, and it's going to take time for everybody to understand where these fields need to be entered into the MLS.
Yeah, I agree, Sherry. It's going to take a lot of time, and eventually, again, I think what Fannie is going to want is for everybody to do it consistently, so that they can have good data for their database.
Yeah.
I just wish they'd open up that database and let us use some of the information.
So we will be making this recording available, and we will be putting a link to it in next week's Racy Notes as well. So if anyone wants to go back and review or share it with some people that were not on the call today, you can do that. But I just want to say a big thank you to Jason. You've just been a great wealth of information, and obviously you can check out Education Resources website for additional courses on these types of subjects. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to end the meeting for all, but have a great day, and if we have additional questions, you can always send them my way, and I can get with you, Jason. So,
Perfect. That'll work.
all right, thanks. Bye.
Thank you.